Welcome to Two Couples Coaches podcast, where certified relational life coaches Bev and Suzette guide you through the highs, lows, and in-betweens of love and relationships. Trained by Terry Real and the Relational Life Institute, Bev and Suzette help couples and individuals create deeper connections. Whether you are in a relationship that spans many years, navigating a new relationship, or simply seeking better ways to communicate, this podcast is your weekly roadmap to love, deeper connection, and relational growth. So now, please welcome the hosts of Two Couples Coaches, Bev and Suzette.
Hi, Suzette.
Hi, Bev.
How are you today?
Good. It's good to be back.
Good. So, today we're going to talk about boundaries. And I just want to put it out there for you. Those of you who are listening, we will be showing a PowerPoint. So, hopefully, we can put the link to that in the show notes if you're listening to this as a replay. If you're watching, then enjoy. So, what about boundaries and how do they fit into healthy relationships? Boundaries are actually something internal, and they're not about shutting out people or letting everything in. They're about protecting our emotional space and at the same time staying connected. This is where I end. This is where you begin. We're going to be using real stories, practical scripts, and insights from relational life therapy and our own practices. And we'll show you how to tell what's true for you and how to handle feedback without falling apart. So, welcome back to Two Couples Coaches. I'm Bev Ehrlich, and I'm here today with Suzette. As I said, welcome back, Suzette. And today we're diving into this core piece of what makes relationships work. And we must have healthy boundaries as one of the features. I wanted to I wanted to share with you a clip from Friends that some of you might be familiar with. That really make us all laugh because it shows how boundaries can be messy, confusing, and sometimes hilarious and not clear. So, what actually happens is Phoebe is giving somebody a massage in Ross's apartment. When Ross walks in, he doesn't know that she's using his apartment for her business, quite honestly. And he gets really annoyed. And she finds that very hard to understand. Like, my other friends allow me in. What's the problem here? And it's a great question because when are our boundaries too much like a wall? And when are they too porous and they let everything in? So the reality is that our boundaries are in essence a screening device. They have two parts to them. They protect us from the outside world and they protect the outside world from us. We don't just leak everything from the inside onto the world, and we don't always let everything in from the outside world. It's not necessarily always about us. It's what we do internally and how we experience and deal with things. It's like our skin is to our bodies. Caleb, can you put the first slide up, please? Thank you. So, like our skin is to our internal organs, right? Our skin protects our internal organs and it also protects the world from our internal organs leaking out. And that's so too our psychic boundaries. They're almost like you can think of it like an orange peel, where the inside part, the white part, contains us, and the outer part protects the world from us. So, if we were to talk about that clip again, Suzette, which boundaries are working, if any, and which are not working, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, and before we talk about that, I just want to just say, one of my clients one day said, "I know everybody talks about boundaries, but I don't really get it. Like it seems simple, but it's not. And I just want to validate that. Yeah, you hear about boundaries all over the place. And it is such a critical part of relationships. Like anytime there is a relationship problem, guaranteed there's a boundaries problem. And this aspect of psychological boundaries that we're talking about may be a version of boundaries that you've never heard before. I know this was new to me. I always thought of boundaries as kind of like, oh, they're just my limits. Like I'm not okay with that, and I'm not okay with that, and I'm okay with this. But what we're talking about is kind of these psychological boundaries of that allow us to be in connection with people that are different than us. So I think this is probably one of the most critical aspects of relationship. And like I said, people with healthy psychological boundaries aren't needing help usually. It's people who are struggling with these psychological boundaries. So when you're talking about, what was and wasn't working in this example with Ross and Rachel, there was a lot of psychological boundaries that weren't working. Kind of like where do I end and another person begins? That's kind of the containing boundary. Like, am I contained or am I spilling out and managing and controlling things that aren't mine? That's kind of Phoebe, right? She doesn't understand what belongs to me and what doesn't. So she doesn't have a very good containing boundary. And then Ross needing to protect himself and set limits. That is a protective boundary. So both are at play, but I just want to reemphasize that this aspect of psychological boundaries is very different and will probably be a very new concept to
And
a lot.
so, absolutely. And I want to amplify what you just said. When we talk in session about boundaries, and I'll sometimes show people these slides, it sounds like, oh, I get it. But it's not easy to carry out. And the reason it's not easy to carry out, it's like walking. If you didn't see appropriate boundaries in your family of where you grew up, it's something you have to learn. It's like learning a new language. And it can be uncomfortable. It can come with guilt. And, but and it's something that we can't do to someone else. We don't boundary someone else. We can set a limit. But let's dive in a little bit more. So, yeah, I love what you were saying. So, Phoebe's containing boundary was like, why can't I use your apartment? What's yours is mine, mine is yours. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to ask you. And what Ross is saying is, hang on, I'm setting a limit. This is not for everyone. And I'm asking you to respect that. So, would you like to talk, Suzette, a little bit about the spectrum of boundaries, how we can be completely walled off, or how we can be boundaryless, and what the circle of health is? Where do we really want to see ourselves in relationship?
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember you don't just have good boundaries. You practice them.
Sorry, you're just asking. Yes, please,
Yeah,
Caleb, can you the second
slide.
boundary?
Let's
Yeah,
slide of the spectrum. So
thank
I'll
you.
describe it for those of you who are just watching. So on one end of this continuum, you have walled off, meaning your boundaries, you're really firm. You're like a wall, like nothing's coming in, nothing's coming out. You're too protective. Like if somebody said to you, "Hey, what you did hurt my feelings," you're so walled off and protected you just get defensive and it just bounces off. No, I didn't do that. No, that's not how it happened, right? That's being very walled off. You're so protective that anything someone says to you, you just defend against it, right? So that's being more on the walled off end of this spectrum. And then the opposite end would be boundaryless. And boundaryless mean like again the example of the orange, like the peel, the orange peel keeps the juices in so they don't spill out. Well, if you're boundaryless, it means you are spilling out inappropriately. Maybe you're yelling, maybe you're screaming at people, maybe you're being rude, you're not filtering your word choices. So you're spilling out what's inside you is coming out inappropriately, right? So that's boundaryless. But you can also be boundaryless, meaning you don't have like a peel to protect, an orange, the peel protects it so the bugs and stuff aren't coming in. Well, if you're boundaryless, if you're on the boundaryless side, you don't have any protection. So somebody says something or their face looks disappointed, and then you take it personal, like, oh, they hate me. Like, oh no, I can never talk to them again. There's no like way to protect yourself from anything happening, people's words or their facial expressions or their moods. You just absorb it all and feel like you have to then do something different because of it. So that's kind of the spectrum, walled off or boundaryless. And what we want is to be somewhere in the middle. We want to be able to move into the middle. We want to be able to be flexible and adaptable to the situation and have appropriate boundaries. So we're both protected and we're connected at the same time. We're not walled off and we're not boundaryless. We're in the middle, and we'll talk about what that looks like.
Right. Do you have any examples to show what this might look like from your practice?
Yeah, and also personally. So I can say I tend to be on the boundaryless side, right? We all gravitate towards one side or the other on a bad day. I tend to gravitate towards the boundaryless side. If somebody says something, I will take it personal. I did just the other day. My teenagers were just being teenagers, and I took it personal, like, oh, they don't appreciate me as a mother. And I'm prone to that. And I see that a lot with clients. I see a lot of I had a couple just the other day where the husband is very walled off and the wife cannot tell him anything without him becoming defensive. That is so problematic in relationships. If you can't say, hey, this isn't working for me, or hey, this hurt my feeling without it being met with defensiveness, that's a problem. So, yeah, I see a lot of walled off people and I see a lot of boundaryless people. Another example, I had a client just the other day who, yeah, he had given his wife a gift and she had a facial expression of disappointment, and he took that personal, and for 40 years had resentment about that in their marriage, right? That's being boundaryless, not being able to separate. Maybe her reaction wasn't about me and my gift giving. It might have just been about her expectations, or, just so it is so problematic. And I see this, like I said, healthy couples really don't need help, or healthy boundaried people tend to not need help with their relationships. It's the boundaries that are either walled off or boundaryless that's causing so much of the relationship problems. What about you? What do you see?
Should we talk about it in just a few seconds when we come back? You are watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV. We'll be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hi, welcome back. So we're talking about boundaries and how they aren't just a nice. Oh, back now. Are we back? We're back.
Yeah.
So we're talking about boundaries, which aren't just a nice to have little thing to attach to our relationships. They're essential. And without them, as Suzette was saying, that spectrum, we can either be too shut down and emotionally completely walled off, or we leak, we overshare, we people please, we react instead of responding. It's not about punishing or policing the other one when we put up a limit. It's about respect and clarity for ourselves and others. So you asked me if I see this also in my practice, which of course I do very much in the form of control, and it's hidden um, under the guise, if you like, of but it's for the person's best interest. So a client sat with me yesterday and he said, I really need my daughter and wife to have a good relationship. He needs. So he organized something that they could do together and it just kind of blew up in his face. So that people pleasing, that's so our work is what is that need doing for him? Why does he need that? So that's just an example that I see a lot where that's a sense of control. The boundary is containing boundaries too porous.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we talk enough about that. How when we're not contained, when we don't have a good containing boundaries, we try to manage things that aren't ours to manage. We control things. Again, we're spilling out into areas that are beyond us. Where do I end and someone else begins? That's part of not having a good enough containing boundary. And there's so many ways we spill out. Control is one
right,
of them for sure.
absolutely. So I think it's appropriate to honor Pia Melody, who unfortunately passed away this week, who has influenced Terry's work. Pia was a therapist at the Meadows, and she's influenced Terry's work and hence our work. So I'd like to honor her. And she did a lot of work with boundaries, codependence. What does that look like? So I want to just honor her and say that a lot of what we're sharing tonight, in my case tonight, um, is influenced by her work. Um, so another way to kind of drill down and say, well, what do I do with this boundary stuff? Is to look at the information that's coming at us. Somebody says something, and we can think about what's coming to us and how it's going to land for us, and what we say, how it's going to land on the other. We're always on a seesaw when you're talking to someone, when you're in relationship with someone. So the boundary as a screening device, it helps us differentiate what's true about me, what's true about you who's speaking to me, what's a projection from you to me, and what's not true. So when I'm thinking about what I want to say on a good day, I can think, is it true? What I'm going to say, is it kind? Is it necessary? So my boundary, and this is something that my husband's, for instance, pointed out to me. It will open up when I think he needs a teaching moment. So he will share something, but I know better. And sometimes I can find myself on a very good day catching myself and thinking, he doesn't need me to teach him. He's not asking me to teach me. He's sharing something with me. Is it necessary to say that? So in our case, very often he'll share about patients he's seen, challenges that he's seen during the day. And I will inevitably ask him, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Did you say this to the patient? Did you? And he pointed that out to me. It doesn't make me, the first casualty will be, I don't want to share with you. I actually want to shut down, because the minute I share, you number one, take their side, and you're giving me the drill. Did I do this and did I do that? So when someone's speaking to us, I'm not listening to take the blame. It's not to be shamed. It's to take, and you can think of it like a windshield. If I throw an egg at the windshield, it'll just go splat. some of what people say to us is not about us. It's really about them. And we need to think about that. So I would say, I wanted to just say, and then I really want to hear um, some of your thoughts as well, Suzette, about those three features. Um, you know what? I think I'll let you talk about it a bit more as the pitcher's mitt, because I'm not a baseball player, but I guess that's part of your culture and very much fits with you. Caleb, can you bring up the slide about the boundary practice? Let's have a look how it fits into
Yeah.
this metaphor.
So again, boundaries aren't something like you just have. It's a practice that you do. And yeah, imagine putting up a baseball mitt in front of your face. If there's things coming at you, and your job is to, you've got then something to take it and catch a ball and look at it. Is this really about me? Is this feedback that is relevant? Is this is somebody's mood that they're kind of conveying towards me? Is that about them, or is it about me? So a boundary is like a catcher's mitt in front of your face, and you're taking whatever's coming at you, and then you're looking at it, and then dropping it or throwing it back to them. Like, actually, this is about them. It's not about me. So that ball belongs there. This ball, yeah, this is kind of relevant to me. I do struggle with that. So I'm going to take in that feedback. I'm going to keep this ball, right? So any kind of boundary practice is just kind of an imagination exercise of, I need something between you and me to filter what's coming at me. So, for example, when my kids were just being teenagers and complaining about, they were saying stuff about me, I had to remember I had to put up my boundaries. Again, boundaries is something you do. I had to put up my imaginary boundary and be like, this is about them being teenagers, being normal teenagers, complaining, not seeing the big picture, having a limited view. That ball does not belong, because I felt that I was starting to take that in and be like, oh, I'm too this of a mother. I'm too controlling of a mother. And I threw that back. Like, nope, that is not about me. I know in this instance, I am doing the right thing as a mother, and they're just pushing back as teenagers do. Right. So that was an example of when I remembered my boundaries. There's plenty of times when I don't have my catcher's mitt up, and I absorb it and start to feel something: anger, frustration, shame. Right. So I love the image of the baseball mitt.
Right. So, what we're inviting you to essentially do is to become curious about the information is coming at us all the time, and we're putting out information. So, a client recently said to me, the work that we do is we're always inviting our clients to be relational, not only with each other, but with us, and to try and be able to repair. A client said to me, what you just said to me was sarcastic. And I took that relational pause and I said, I'm sorry, you heard it that way. That wasn't my intention. And that allowed her to give pause to it and to recognize that she came from a very sarcastic background, and within her relationship, sarcasm is kind of not always a direct way of saying something. So there was an example where she threw that back at me. And as Suzette so beautifully put, I gave it back to her. And of course, I apologize, because it's not that I didn't say that. I didn't say to her, I didn't say that. I spoke into the fact that that wasn't my intention, wasn't to be sarcastic. I didn't deny what she thought she'd heard. So that is like some of the ways we see this in our practices. The other aspect to this that I want to speak into, and Fanny, I was just having a conversation before I got this onto this call with somebody. The boundary will also depend on the nature of the relationship you have with someone. So where else? On the pickleball court, I was playing pickleball the other day with a partner who, without asking, she will happily tell you where to stand, what you do. You didn't do this. She couldn't return the ball because of me, whatever. And she said to me, I need you to stand there and I will stand there. wherever. I need you to be at the net and I'll be at the back. And what resonated with me was she never said to me, and let's say you're at the back, I'll be at the net. And I noticed this, I observed it, and I didn't say anything because she's not a person that I feel close to, that I want to overly engage with, that I want to develop a deeper relationship. So I could let it go over me. Had somebody closer to me said something, I might have responded differently. And we have that example too in our home. I live with my father-in-law, and sometimes he'll say something that sounds so innocent to my husband. To me, it sounds so innocent to me, and my husband will get triggered because of the nature of the relationship. So I want you to remember that there are only generally a few people who matter. So you don't always have to answer back. You can think of it also when your boundary is feeling very porous. I like to think of it as a chameleon. A chameleon or a lizard needs sunshine to get worked up. Boundaryless people need other people to shine down on them, to say good things about them, for them to feel good about themselves. More healthy boundaried people don't need that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I often see and experience boundaries around your partner's mood. Like if your partner is in a bad mood, someone who's boundaryless takes that in as like, okay, now I got to manage and I got to figure out what's going on with them. And maybe I did something and I have to like push and try to find out. That's like being very boundaryless. I'm not contained about what's theirs and what's mine, and I'm absorbing their mood instead of a healthy circle of health boundary would be like their mood is theirs to manage. I can be curious. I can see, hey, do you need anything from me? But I don't have to take that in and then start to manage and control. So that's one aspect of being boundaryless. That I see a lot in relationships is just being so reactive to each other's moods. And so being, again, that catcher's mitt, being curious, whatever information is coming at you, whether it's words or somebody's mood, just taking that information in. And we can talk more about kind of how to keep developing this boundaries and these skills after our break. So you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we'll be back in 2 minutes after this sponsor break.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, so we're back talking about boundaries, and what we obviously see with couples, because we didn't marry ourselves, is that we have to deal with differences. And these can be many. I'm going to let you speak a little bit more into that because you speak with interfaith differences, but every couple is managing differences in some form or another. It could be parenting. I know you have a lot more experience with that. But before we jump into that, Suzette, can I ask you to speak into it from what are our non-negotiables? So, Caleb, if you can put the next slide up, please. Our partner's going to say something to us. It's going to give us feedback. And the question we want to ask ourselves, is it about me or is it about them? And this is a practical tool that we want to leave you with today. This practical tool will help you pause, stay centered, and decide what truly belongs to you and what doesn't. So the question you're going to ask yourselves, what am I not prepared to negotiate? What are my non-negotiables, firstly with others? What have you told yourself you must have or won't tolerate in relationship? And I think that speaks very much into interfaith parental challenges. And about self, what are some of your non-negotiables, no matter what, with yourself? Can you speak a little bit more into that, please, Suzette?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody should have non-negotiables. Like for me, I will not tolerate being yelled at in my marriage partnership. Like if my husband were to yell at me, that is not okay with me, or scream at me or call me names or speak in a derogatory way. Like that's a non-negotiable for me. And I think everybody should have non-negotiables. These are the things, if this happens, I'm out, right? If you have an affair, I will leave the relationship. If you if you yell at me and scream at me, I'm going to leave the room. I'm not going to just sit there and tolerate that. I'm not going to engage with you. So non-negotiables are really important for boundaries. That's where your protective boundary comes in. I need to protect myself. I need to set limits so that I can stay physically safe, emotionally safe, mentally well. And these are the things that I'm not going to tolerate, and I will leave the relationship or leave the room if these things happen, because I have non-negotiables. And I think that's so important for a healthy relationship, is everybody should have non-negotiables and communicate that clearly through your boundaries by saying, if this happens,
Sorry.
I will. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. No, that's a relational ultimatum. If you can't get to AA meetings and you continue drinking, I will leave. That's not a threat. That's my limit. Now, it's not an easy thing for couples to do. I sometimes ask couples, what will happen if nothing changes? And maybe 25% of the people I see, I say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be ready to see what they can do. And we won't go into there now, but there's also a spectrum. It's not about do I stay, do I leave? There's a whole spectrum in between how you can say, this is my boundary, this is my limit.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some people watching this evening. And should we take a moment to answer some questions? So if anybody has a question, you can email us. Well, not tonight, not live at Two Couples Coaches, right? But we'll put that in the show notes. You can email us to our twocouplescoaches@gmail.com. And you can go ahead right now, if you so wish, and drop your question about boundaries or the losing strategies that we spoke about last week in the chat. Caleb, how do people do that? They've got their chat open for them? Could you speak about that a minute, please?
I think they can just make a comment if they're watching it like on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. They make a comment and it'll show up to us. So you can make comments live and we'll get that information. But for today, we can talk about other questions that people have had.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, great. We'll see if you've got any questions, if there's a brave soul out there. I just want to reiterate, and I also want to apologize that I'm coughing like I am, that boundaries don't develop overnight. It's a skill that we learn, and we often don't learn it from our families of origin. They're a cornerstone, though, healthy boundaries of relational recovery, no matter what the situation. And developing a solid boundary system can take time, sometimes years. And because we're human, we slip, we slide, and it can take a while before it becomes second nature. We want to get to the point where we can feel like that our boundaries are automatic, refined, kind, necessary, where you can stay connected even in tough conversations. And I think we're also living in a time where we're having tremendously tough conversations along a spectrum of many topics. And it's a wonderful way of being curious rather than just going to, no, that's not true. That can't be true what you just said. I think that's it for now. I just want to highlight again that it sounds simple, but it's not, because we didn't learn it when we were young. But if our parents had healthy boundaries, we would have learned it as naturally as walking.
And can I just say, that's why I like to think of boundaries as a practice, because it's like a muscle that you have to engage and use for it to grow stronger. So every time you practice a containing boundary of, I'm going to filter my words and I'm going to not scream, or I'm not going to control things or try to manage things that aren't mine. Every time you practice that, your boundary muscle gets bigger. Or every time you lower your defensiveness, right? If you tend to be more of a walled off boundaried person where you just get defensive and you don't let anything in, every time you practice just setting that down and taking in some feedback, you're strengthening your boundary muscles. And so it's just such a practice that you can use daily, every day. Practice these boundaries of trying to get to the middle, whether you're on the boundaried side or the walled off side, trying to inch toward the middle in whatever circumstance you're in your relationship.
Right. Suzette, when do children learn about boundaries? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think children don't have this muscle, so they just absorb or
Right.
they protect, right? They adapt either by absorbing or protecting to their environment. And so they don't have these muscles to use more appropriate boundaries. They're just sponges. They absorb their parents' moods. They absorb their parents' words and take it as meaning something about them, because they just don't understand the complexities of the world enough to be able to filter it out. So I just think it's important to know that, like, we didn't have these muscles, and now as adults, we really have to develop them through learning
Right.
and practice daily.
And children don't really learn boundaries till about age 12, I believe. And as you say, they absorb, which means they're egocentric. Children are egocentric, and they interpret everything as being about them. So if the parents are arguing, the child is part of that argument in his nervous system. His or her nervous system takes it in as if about being about them. So if, for an example, if a mother says to a child, no more candy, the child says, but you're hurting me. But what's really happening is that the child is generating a pain from it. This is obviously a deeper place of internally from hearing no, that the parent is hurting them. And nobody can hurt us when our boundary is up. We will talk about more serious boundary violations, but we choose how to interpret. And an adult example that I'd like to give is, let's say a partner says, hey, you want to go out tonight to eat Chinese, whatever. And the partner says, no, I don't. Partner A, who made the invitation, can interpret that as, you never want to go out. Why don't you want to go out with me? Whereas we could, with curiosity and boundary, we can see that as a micro disappointment, if you like. In other words, how come you don't want to go out for Chinese tonight? Well, actually, we had this huge office party and I ate late. Or actually, I'd like to cuddle on the couch. I've been wanting to watch this movie. Are you up to that? And hey, maybe we can go out next week for Chinese, or maybe we can order it in. Is that okay? So that's where curiosity and the boundary will allow you to see it's not all about you. You know, what is going on for your partner when you don't get everything you want. And that's an important shift.
Yeah. And I do think it is important to talk about boundary violations because, there's these smaller issues with boundaries, but then there's
Can
these
you
big
put
issues.
a slide up, please, Caleb? Because it's nice to see what they are, Suzette,
Yeah.
as you go through them, please. Thank you. Keep
Yeah, so
going.
I'll just name some of the boundaries. Oh, it's not the boundary exercise. It's called boundary violations is the slide. But I'll just read it. It says yelling and screaming, name calling, like you're such a, shaming, humiliating, mocking, being sarcastic. We often don't think of being sarcastic as a boundary violation, meaning I am not contained and I am inappropriately spilling out onto other people. Telling
Mhm.
people what they should or shouldn't do without being asked, telling someone what they should think or feel or what their motives should be. Again, that's spilling out into areas that are not yours to say or give input about. Making promises and breaking them, that's not being contained enough. So these are all violations of boundaries. These are all being boundaryless and spilling out inappropriately onto other people. And so those need to be called out and named. I think a lot of people maybe grew up in families where there was a lot of boundary violations. I had a client just the other day who said, I grew up, my parents just yelled all the time and screamed at each other, called each other names. So to her, like living in an environment with boundary violations is so normal. So to her, yelling and screaming is normal. So these things need to be called out. Like that is a boundary violation. Yelling, screaming, name calling, so that you can call that out in your own relationship and identify this is unhealthy. This is a violation of boundaries. Either I'm violating the boundaries or my boundaries are being violated by someone
Right.
else.
Especially thinking about how that's landing on your partner when you're yelling and screaming.
Mhm.
Right. We're off to another break. So you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we'll be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hi, we're back again talking about boundaries. And in this section, we would like to leave you with some really practical tools. So, the first one is the boundary script. How do I speak my boundaries in essence? So, I feel, could you put the slide up, please, Caleb? There are 4 parts to it. Thank you. I feel when you do, would you, as a favor to me, be willing to? And in order to honor and respect myself, the next time it happens, I will do right X, Y, and Z. Kind of spoke into a little bit about like when you ask your partner, I'd like you to go to AA meetings. So I'll give you an example, a different example, which could look like this. Say your partner's often on the phone, scrolling on their phone during dinner, and it makes you feel disconnected. So I feel disconnected and unimportant when you're on the phone during dinner. Could you, as a favor to me, keep your phone away from the table during our meals? And in order to honor myself, if this happens again, I'll choose to end the meal early so I can take some time to calm myself. So I said it in kind of a calm voice, and that's also important, the energy. It's not to punish. But if I feel that we're not having a dinner together, I will be removing myself. You're not asking permission, you're putting it out there. This is my limit. And your partner can either accept that or not. Then the negotiation could start. Should we jump to the next slide, Suzette, about a boundary exercise?
Yeah, I think it's really good to just understand about your own boundaries. So some questions you can ask yourself are, in what situations do I tend to have clear and connected boundaries? Like you might be really boundaried with some people, but maybe not with your partner or spouse. Maybe you have good boundaries at work, but not in your relationships. In what situations do I tend to have rigid or porous boundaries? So when am I walled off? When am I boundaryless? It's really important to understand this. And again, take the laser focus off your partner, focus on yourself. When do I do this? Not when does my spouse have rigid boundaries. As a whole, my family was more, were they walled off or were they more boundaryless? I come from a very boundaryless, one parent very boundaryless, one parent is very walled off. You might come from a mixture of both and see which one you are more like. Who are you more like? Like my mother was more this, my father was more this. Who do I take after as far as my boundaries? And looking at it now, my default boundary style is either boundaryless or walled off. So it's really important to know that about yourself. Again, your partner can figure their own out, but worry about yourself. What is my boundary style? Like I tend to be boundaryless. What on a bad day? What about you, Bev?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Caleb, you can take the slide down. Thank you. But I wanted to say that's the question we want to ask ourselves, exactly what you just said. When you look at this exercise, it'll give you wonderful insight into how do I show up in relationship and where do I need to make the adjustments. It's not about becoming from one extreme to the other. Can I start taking in things that my partner's saying that might be true about me that I could change? Possibly the way I'm doing things is not working right now.
Yeah, because that's about how you impact the relationship. So if you discover, well, I'm on the walled off side, then your work is to try to inch more towards that circle of health in the middle of being able to take in feedback, care about another person's experience, not just keep everything out, maybe share some of your emotions, not just keep everything in, but practice vulnerability. That's the work of the walled off person to get to the middle, and the work of the boundaryless person to inch towards the center is putting up that catcher's mitt, right? I'm not going to take everything personal. I'm going to have a barrier between you and me. I'm not going to take your moods as meaning I have to jump in and fix and control. And I'm not going to take everything you say as meaning something about who I am. I'm going to have my own self-esteem that's not impacted by that. So that's work you can do. And also to not spill out and try to manage and control things that aren't yours to manage and control. That's inching towards the circle of health. And that is hard work. I have to practice this every day in all of my relationships, practice my muscles of appropriate healthy boundaries. What about you, Beth?
And that's beautiful what you said, because a relationship isn't something I have. It's really that minute to minute practice. What's going on in this conversation right now? I know sometimes because of the boundaryless part of me, I can be talking about something and I'm not noticing the person's like, you know, because I have to say what I have to say.
Mhm.
And I want to remind you all, we're talking about relational trauma, and relational trauma is about inappropriate relationship. inappropriate boundaries. And healing comes from making it from appropriate relationship. Again, not easy to do, not easy to practice, but it really can deepen our connections when we can get to healthier boundaries with the people who matter most. So, excuse me, Caleb, can you put up the last slide, please? Let us end with this beautiful quote from Pierre, whom we also want to honor tonight. Without boundaries, says Pierre, there is no relationship. Without relationship, there is no intimacy. Without intimacy, there is no love. Without love, the spiritual path is hidden from us. Thank you, Caleb. Any last thoughts about that beautiful, beautiful quote?
No, again, boundaries are an essential, fundamental building block of a healthy relationship. It's a great place to start if you're having problems in your relationship is, how are my boundaries? Can I get more to the circle of health in my relationship?
Thank you. Thank you for this, Suzette. So thanks so much for joining us today. We're on Two Couples Coaches here on Bold Brave TV. We're live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. ET. And you can also find us on all major podcast and video platforms. We'd love to hear from you. This is about you. This is for you. Send us your questions, comments, suggestions for future topics to twocouplescoaches@gmail.com. That's written out, TWO, Couples Coaches. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Follow us on social media, YouTube, visit our individual websites. These will also be in the show notes, and learn more about our work and how we work with relationships.
Well, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Be kind to yourselves and be kind to your partner and others around you.
If you've ever asked yourself, how do we make this relationship stronger, healthier, more fulfilling? This podcast is for you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Bev.
This has been Two Couples Coaches with your hosts, Bev and Suzette. Tune in each week as Bev and Suzette share expert insights, have heart-to-heart conversations with guests, answer listener questions, and dive into the challenges and joys of building a life together. Because in relationships, just like in life, growth happens when you show up, stay curious, and keep evolving together. Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.